Nick was born in a small town where the streets were quiet, the houses modest, and opportunities rare. His family lived in a small two-bedroom apartment above a grocery store. His father worked long shifts at a local factory, while his mother took on sewing jobs at home to make ends meet. They had just enough to survive, but never more. As a child, Nick could sense the heaviness of his parents' struggles. He remembered evenings when his father returned home exhausted, his hands rough from labor. He remembered his mother stretching a single meal to feed them all. Yet, in the middle of hardship, there was always love. His parents would smile at him and say, "Nick, no matter what, believe in yourself. Life can be hard, but you can always choose how you respond." Those words shaped him. From a young age, Nick was curious about people and about how things worked. When he helped his mother carry groceries, he noticed how the shopkeepers treated their customers. When he delivered newspapers, he saw how some people greeted him with kindness while others barely noticed. He began to understand that the smallest gestures, kindness, patience, respect, could leave deep impressions. At school, Nick was not a top student. He struggled in math and often felt behind. But he had something many others didn't: a relentless will. When others gave up after failing, Nick would try again and again until he understood. His teachers noticed his persistence and often told him, "You may not be the smartest in the room, but you are the most determined." By the time Nick was a teenager, he was already working small jobs, cleaning cars, mowing lawns, stacking shelves in the local market. He wasn't doing it just for money, though every coin mattered to his family. He was doing it to learn. Every workplace was a classroom. Every interaction was a lesson. He watched closely, absorbing details like a sponge. At 16, Nick got a job at a hardware store. The owner, an old man named Robert, became one of his earliest mentors. Robert was strict but fair, and he often told Nick, "Business is not about products. It's about people. Treat people right, and they'll always come back." Nick carried those words deep in his heart. But life wasn't easy. When Nick turned 18, his father lost his factory job due to layoffs. The family spiraled into financial crisis. Bills piled up, rent became uncertain, and the fear of losing everything hung over them. Nick knew he had to step up. He worked double shifts, sacrificing sleep and leisure to keep the family afloat. There were nights he returned home exhausted, only to find his mother silently crying at the kitchen table. Those moments broke him inside, but they also fueled him. He promised himself that one day he would create a life where his family never had to worry again. With that fire inside, Nick began dreaming bigger. He wanted to start his own business. But the reality was harsh. He had no money, no connections, and little experience. Still, he believed. He saved every dollar he earned, even skipping meals to put money aside. His first step was small: a food cart selling sandwiches and coffee near the bus station. The early days were brutal. Some mornings, he stood in the freezing cold for hours with no customers. Sometimes he sold nothing at all. Other times, he went home with less than he had spent on supplies. People doubted him, even laughed. "Why don't you get a real job?" they said. But Nick refused to quit. He reminded himself of Robert's words, "It's about people." So he smiled at every customer, remembered their names, listened to their stories, and served them with care. Slowly, a few came back. Then more. Word began to spread. One evening, after a long day, an older gentleman stopped by his cart. He was curious about Nick's determination and asked about his dreams. Nick spoke honestly about his desire to own a cafe, to create a place where people didn't just eat, but felt valued. The man listened carefully. What Nick didn't know was that this stranger had once run successful businesses himself. Impressed by Nick's honesty and persistence, he began to mentor him, teaching him about finances, management, and leadership. With time, Nick took the leap. He rented a tiny space and opened his first cafe. It was nothing glamorous: second-hand chairs, chipped tables, and walls he painted himself. The menu was simple, but the atmosphere was full of heart. At first, the cafe was nearly empty. The silence was painful, and Nick often wondered if he had made a mistake. But instead of giving in, he used the quiet hours to improve recipes, clean, and learn. Little by little, customers came. They noticed the warmth of the place, the way Nick greeted them like family, the effort he put into every detail. Soon, word spread again. The cafe became a small hub of the neighborhood. People didn't just come for food, they came because they felt at home. But success brought new challenges. Nick had to hire staff, and managing people was harder than he thought. There were mistakes, misunderstandings, even betrayals. At times, bills piled up faster than profits, and Nick feared losing everything. Yet he never let negativity take over. He reminded himself daily, every problem is a chance to grow. Every obstacle is an invitation to rise higher. Years passed. One cafe turned into 2, then 3. Nick learned to expand carefully, never losing sight of his values. He invested in training young people, giving them opportunities he once wished for. His businesses grew not only in profit, but in reputation. He became known as the young man who built success with integrity, kindness, and relentless will. As his cafes flourished, Nick began to dream again. He invested in small community projects, sponsored local schools, and gave free meals to those in need. He remembered what it felt like to have nothing, and he refused to let others feel abandoned. His life was no longer just about success, it was about impact. One day, as he walked through one of his busiest cafes, filled with laughter and the smell of fresh coffee, Nick paused. He looked around and realized, this was more than a business. This was a legacy of persistence, positivity, and willpower. He thought back to the cold mornings at the food cart, the sleepless nights, the doubts, the tears of his mother at the kitchen table. Every pain, every failure, every moment of struggle had been necessary to prepare him for this. Nick's story became a living testament that success is not built in giant leaps, but in small, consistent steps. He proved that positivity can carry a person through storms, and that persistence is the bridge between dreams and reality. And so, his message to anyone listening is simple: never give up. No matter how hard life gets, no matter how impossible your dream seems, remember Nick's journey. Remember that with will, positivity, and persistence, even the smallest beginnings can grow into something extraordinary.